It's clapping! Damn! So you're telling me if a woke person tried to rob me, all I'd have to do is just... There are real people that are really scared of clapping.
Real people.
I guess my best advice to you is to try your best to not listen to those fears. Really, it's such a complicated issue. This is just my little degenerate-ass response to it.
Yeah. Yes. Yes, it is. The fear of clapping. I don't, is that got like a term for it? I don't think it's necessarily about fear. I think it's more about just sensory overload, to be honest. It's like it's kind of framed as this like personal thing, like a personality trait. Like you're just too scared of the claps. You know, they scare you too much. It's not the fact that your brain like upscales the intensity of all the sensory stimuli that you experience. Said clapping is sometimes quite difficult for like people who don't have sensory differences, and it's upscaled even further. Nothing to do with that, of course. It's just a personal feeling.
My degenerate solution, I don't know. Believing in something is a really powerful thing. If you believe that you're scared of claps, you're going to be scared of claps if you really, truly believe that you are. You got to just realize that claps aren't scary. That's a crazy sentence, by the way. But it's not going to be a flip of a switch, right? You'll probably still get scared of them. But eventually your brain will come to the realization, oh, I was just kind of freaking out over some small shit. It's like...
Again, habituate yourself to it. It's talking to people who don't generally habituate to sensory stimuli. This is going to be a little bit interesting. Woke people don't know anything. It's going to be a small clip of this. There's something that caught my eye. I was like, hey, that's an autism accommodation that you're talking about, bro. Pancho, man. Let's have a look at what Pancho has to say about sensory accommodations in public speaking events, and whether there's anything that we can inform him on, anything that perhaps he's glossing over. It's probably, I don't know how long this clip's going to be, because it's part of like a really long video that we're not going to watch all of, because it's not all related to autism. But there is just like a little bit that I picked up. I think it would be important to talk about, so let's go for it.
So I found a video today, and I think it perfectly represents or accurately depicts how pussy some of these new age woke people are. Now we're looking at a democratic socialist convention. Yeah, I'll give my brief opinion on socialism. I think that the evidence really speaks for itself. We've had plenty of societies in the world that have tried it out. Did not work out too well. I just don't think it's realistic to put that in place for the US, but...
This is not the point that I was talking about. It's coming up. I'm not getting into a political discussion here.
But I didn't come here to talk about that. Let's all just pop a squat, relax. I'm ready to be enlightened.
I thank Natalie for flattering me. The truth is I'm not the leader of security here. Y'all are. Everybody is responsible for the collective security, safety, and everyone's needs being met here, keeping each other safe, keeping each other secure, and making sure that everybody is able to fully participate in this convention. We have a lot of disabled comrades, and a lot of those are invisible disabilities. So it's up to us to modify that space to make sure that everybody is able to move in the ways that they need to move. First of all, in this room, I see that no one's clapping for me. It could be because I'm not engaging, but it also is because everyone's doing this. And that's really important, because those loud bursts of noise, even though this is a noisy space, when we can do something like reducing that, that's really important. So please don't clap, shoot up these.
So instead of having it...
So I imagine that this person has been putting in some sensory adjustments for individuals, particularly neurodivergent individuals in the audience, autistic ADHD, who have sensory differences, who may not like the old clapping. I mean, it's not something that I personally struggle with, but I know some people who find it very distressing. Usually when it comes to sensory accommodations and adjustments, I think it's good to try and be as inclusive as possible. You know, usually if I go to places like that, I will have these little puppies in to help with the sensory overload. Let's see what Pancho has to say about this.
Having everybody clap, he wants people to... Yes, yeah. Why he wants everybody to do this is because, you know, loud noises scare people. Even though...
Loud noises scare people. I don't know if that's the reason to why. I mean, I can imagine that some people with like, some forms of PTSD might find that quite difficult. But I think the reason for why people do that is to reduce the amount of extreme volumes of clapping that people experience during like audience claps. That can, of course, cause large amounts of sensory overload for any autistic people in the audience.
Even though it's just claps. You get a fucking World War II vet in that room, and he'd shut everybody up. He'd be like, y'all don't know what the fuck I went through. Y'all are a bunch of pussies. Come on, man. We gotta be that considerate of people who are scared of clapping. And y'all, I know there's gonna be a bunch of pussies in my comment section that are like, sensory overload. My best advice for y'all is to...
There's going to be a lot of pussies in the comment section screaming sensory overload. Well, man, it is something that people experience, and like, it's hard to translate exactly what that experience is like for people. Some people can deal with it, some people can't. If you're wanting to make an event accessible, I think like removing clapping, if you can, is like a pretty easy win. I think in the grand scheme of things, it's not like you're significantly changing the event in a massive way. I don't know if it's something that I feel should be implemented everywhere. Because as I said, we are people with sensory sort of differences is a minority of people. Doesn't mean that we have to change everything, but when you are promoting an event as sort of inclusive, I think that's a pretty good thing to include at those events.
To buy a 12 gauge shotgun and take it out to the woods and just start shooting it. Start fucking desensitizing yourself from that shit, because bro, the world is not going to revolve around you. Imagine you're working at a movie theater and then by the end of the movie, everybody starts clapping and you have to walk in. Guys, stop! I'm sorry, but...
So please don't clap, shoot up these.
That's that shit that...
So the prescription here is to go into the woods and fire a shotgun. Interesting solution to that. I think it's more likely to cause permanent hearing loss rather than like reduce sensory input. I suppose that might reduce sensory input at the cost of your hearing, if that's a reasonable suggestion. But actually, like, this is quite a common thing that people say to autistic people, actually, who struggle with sensory difficulties. Just get used to it. Start wearing your headphones. You're going to sensitize yourself to it. To a certain extent, you can you can increasingly sensitize yourself to it. But there's a concept to do with that. It's called habituation. And habituation is, as he said, getting used to things. Most people who aren't neurodivergent, who don't have sensory differences, do habituate pretty well. So a good example of this would be like a snail. If you boop a snail on the eyeball or on its little eye tendril things, whatever you want to call it, I don't know what they're called. You boop it on there, it'll sort of retract, go back into its shell a little bit. If you do it again, it will retract, go back into its shell a little bit. If you keep doing it, at some point it's going to stop. It's going to stop doing that, and that's what you call habituation. Same thing, aeroplanes going over like the fields. First time that happens, probably a lot of animals are going to look up and say, "Oh, what's that?" and get really scared. Happens enough times, they're going to habituate to it to a certain degree. They have actually shown in some like scientific studies that autistic people don't habituate like most people would. So trying to desensitize yourself to things like this actually doesn't work. If you go each day and you experience clapping to the same magnitude each day, you might know what to expect, and perhaps it won't shock you as much, but you will still experience the same amount of like sensory overload. So it's not a thing that you can just like erase from personal experience.
Shit that my old librarian wanted us to do when I was in elementary school. Okay.
And additionally with the noise issue, like avoid hissing, avoid...
Hissing? Who the fuck is is hissing?
Waving banners, right? If you don't know what to do, show up these, right? I'm sure there's lots of ways that we can communicate to each other without needing to rely on something that's going to hurt somebody else.
Hurt somebody, bro. It's
Again, just lack of just ignorance of people's experiences. You know, it's just plain ignorance of it. Like, I mean, to be honest, I can't blame most people for not understanding like sensory differences, but you know, the organizers obviously like have autistic people coming in, some advisors who have talked about sensory accommodations, and that's just something that they want to implement. I don't think I've ever been to an event where people hiss. I don't know if I would be particularly like overwhelmed by some hissing. It's a pretty soft noise, but it's beside the point, I suppose.
It's clapping! Damn! So you're telling me if a woke person tried to rob me, all I'd have to do is just get the fuck away! Listen, at the end of the day, there are...
When I watched that first, that clapping genuinely did like overwhelm me just a little bit. It's not great, you know? But I just find it funny that he's phrasing it as like woke people. What, you mean autistic people? I suppose maybe clapping an autistic person who's trying to rob you might be an effective way of defense, possibly. My lord.
There are real people that are really scared of clapping.
Real people.
I guess my best advice to you is to try your best to not listen to those fears. Really, it's such a complicated issue. This is just my little degenerate-ass response to it.
Yeah. Yes. Yes, it is. The fear of clapping. I don't. Has that got like a term for it? I don't think it's necessarily about fear. I think it's more about just sensory overload, to be honest. It's like it's kind of framed as this like personal thing, like a personality trait. Like you're just too scared of the claps. You know, they scare you too much. It's not the fact that your brain like upscales the intensity of all the sensory stimuli that you experience. Said clapping is sometimes quite difficult for like people who don't have sensory differences, and it's upscaled even further. Nothing to do with that, of course. It's just a personal feeling.
My degenerate solution, I don't know. Believing in something is a really powerful thing. If you believe that you're scared of claps, then you're going to be scared of claps if you really truly believe that you are. You got to just realize that claps aren't scary. That's a crazy sentence, by the way, but it's not going to be a flip of a switch, right? You'll probably still get scared of them, but eventually your brain will come to the realization, oh, I was just kind of freaking out over some small shit. It's like...
Again, habituate yourself to it. It's talking to people who don't generally habituate to sensory stimuli.
As a kid, when you're going up the stairs and you think there's like a demon chasing you, you know what I'm saying? It's like that same energy. Eventually you realize there was nothing to be scared about. And the fact that this leader that's speaking right now, or whoever he is trying to reaffirm that claps are scary, you guys shouldn't do them, it's gonna freak out those people. It's just such a dumb thing to do, bro. You're keeping people pussy. Compare these people to like army soldiers, and it's like comparing a cat to a lion. I swear to God.
Well, there is a reason why the army doesn't necessarily sort of enlist autistic people into combat, and that is one of the reasons. We do just like find sensory stuff just a little bit too overwhelming. Impacts our ability to process information, function to a certain degree sometimes, and especially pay attention during like highly sort of social complex situations. What other implementations have we got here?
We have quiet rooms that are available. There's a range of options of these, right? On 7, there's one that has video but no sound, if you still want to be able to observe the convention, but the sound is an issue. There's also on Piedmont 8, a completely quiet room. One thing to note there, please don't go into that space with anything that's like an aggressive scent, for instance, right?
I'd be the type of motherfucker to walk in with some liquid ass. Walking in that room with some liquid ass, just going...
because that's going to...
Quiet rooms, great adjustment for an event. Very important for people who experience meltdowns, shutdowns, particularly those who have sensory difficulties. As funny as that, like, it's funny. Like, I'm not gonna lie, like, it made me chuckle. But also, man, like, I'm gonna go harass a bunch of people who have sensory difficulties by clapping and spraying mist in their face of some like undescribable source. Beautiful.
That's going to be difficult for people. The principle of collective security is we don't want to put people in stressful situations that they don't consent to, right?
Life is stressful, motherfucker. Holy shit! You think life is stress-free, dog? If you constantly care about not stressing people out, you're just going to make their life more stressful. Listen to that.
How the god? How does that make any sense? I tell you what, the best thing to do, guys, if someone's stressing out, go over and like clap in their ears, just like shout in their ears. That'll really pull them out of it, you know. That'll really sort them out. I told you that this video is crazy. Like, what the fuck? Life is stressful. Okay, Pancho, would you be fine if, like, well, I mean, you didn't consent to it, but if I get a megaphone and I just shout in your ear with a megaphone, how would that be? I mean, you're not consenting to it, but you don't care about that. Is that cool? Is that cool with you?
Listen to that again. Because guess what? The more stressful situations you're exposed to, the more your tolerance raises for stress. Like, other situations start to not become a big deal because you're dealing with more stress. I wake up every morning and I go in the ice bath. And that's stressful, let me tell you. Being in 30-degree water, when you wake up, the minute I wake up, I'm in it. And the rest of my days are a breeze. Even though I do things that some people would deem to be stressful, like working out in the gym and going crazy in there. But it's nothing. Well,
this is the whole, like, oh, you need to build your calluses kind of approach to it. And I think to some degree there is like some lines of thought there. It's like the whole thing of going to the gym, you know. The gym is not the most like sensorily, I'm talking about the best haven for like not having a sensory overload, let's say. I still go. The thing is, I go with earbuds. Some people go with shades to try and reduce that sensory input. If I don't go with my earphones, it doesn't matter how many times I go without my earphones. I will have the same exact experience of it being overloading, not being able to concentrate on my workout. I go each time, and sometimes I do really struggle, or I have a meltdown, or I have a shutdown, and I don't have a fun time. Doesn't stop me from going. However, it does inform me that I perhaps need to take a bit more precautions when it comes to like going into those spaces. It's just like a normal thing to do, you know. There is a point at which having this mentality of like deal with it doesn't do anything. It's a fine balance, you know. If there's something that you can't change about yourself and something that you struggle with, perhaps consider making some changes instead of just like powering through it and trying to habituate when you just can't.
It's nothing to me anymore because I wake up with that. And this guy's over here lost in the sauce. I don't even know why I said that. I've met some cats that are less pussy than this.
And we have to be accountable to each other that our actions might have negative consequences for other people.
Can we just have a round of, I was going to say a round of applause. Can we have a round of hands, you know, for this guy and the people who organize this? Like, truly thinking about including people with sensory differences into an event. It's awesome. A lot of people just don't go to them because they can be overwhelming. So it's really good to see stuff like this.
We're also talking about de-escalation, right? Because people are going to have different experiences of things that some others might think is normal heatedness, and I think in some of that there's an inevitability there, but it's going to be really traumatic for people if we're not making an affirmative effort to de-escalate each other and de-escalate ourselves, right? If you are having a conflict with somebody, feel free to step away, right? We're going to make sure that you can get out of that space. Let somebody else step away if they need to step away, right? Don't talk to...
I mean, I probably know what he's going to reply with, but this, you know, generally good information. I don't think it needs to be highlighted so much. I mean, like, you know, obviously having a confrontation with someone is not the best situation. I do find, you know, there are some, you know, aspects that I do find like particularly like hyperbolous, like traumatizing. I don't know if you can consider that to be traumatizing. I don't know. I think that there could be better words used, but like that's just going into like highly detailed specifics of it.
Talk to cops. Don't talk to MAGA assholes. We're almost there. Just this, but thank you.
Hey guys, don't cheer! Don't cheer! Stop! Oh,
I do find it quite humorous. Like the audience is like whooping after they give a speech on inclusivity. You know, obviously they need to do a little bit more preparation. People's gut reactions are just coming out, and to be honest, I can't like blame people for like that's just how they've been at events. I think people should try their best, you know, to not do that. It's good to have those things implemented, but I'm also aware that it's not particularly like the commonplace, I guess, for a lot of people. So it's the whole thing about, you know, people in general can be ignorant of the autistic experience, and it's okay to be. Like, the society is not built and we're not taught these things, but once you are aware of it, try your best to like be a bit more inclusive to people.
I'd show up to this meeting with like a train horn.
Oh my God!
To the people who are saying stuff like, oh no, you should be considerate of people who are...
Oh yeah, I wonder how he'd like a train horn in his ear every time that someone's like finished speaking.
scared of clapping. Sorry, it's so funny to say.
Do you think he'd
I'm
habituate?
not gonna throw my rhythm off just to appease somebody that has such a ridiculous fear. I'm sorry, I'm just not. I don't want to feel like I'm constantly walking on eggshells just because somebody's scared of some mildly loud noise. Clapping isn't really that loud. They can go fix that problem before they speak to me.
We are safe and we are
Again, taking it to a personal level, you're fearful of it. It's not about that, dude. Come on.
strong because there's power in collective work, and that's exactly what we're doing here. And we're going to rely on you to make that happen. So I'm very happy to be working with you on this project, and I hope everyone has a great convention.
I'm going to hand it to Natalie to make one quick announcement. Okay, we have our 2 mics up front. We also have 2 additional mics that are...
And do you hear that? No clapping. Well done, guys. Like, they had a little hiccup, they started whooping and stuff, and then they were like, oh yeah, I remember. And they're not doing it now, and nothing's changed. Nothing has changed. Is it important to say, like, okay, you're going to traumatize people? I don't think you're going to traumatize people. Are you going to cause significant, like, sensory overload and discomfort to some people? Yeah. I don't know if you could call that traumatizing. I think some people might feel it's traumatizing, especially, like, I think some of you said in the chat, like, PTSD, like, 100%.
That are being run. So if, for example, you make a point of information or a point of privilege, please, keep your hand up, or stand if you can, and they will run a mic to you.
Not a single thing in this meeting was said that had some value behind it.
I can think of some pretty good, like, uses of that kind of system. Like, I understand from his perspective, it's like, oh, okay, you're gonna let just people who don't have the privilege to step in and sort of speak. But if someone's talking about autism, and like you have a researcher, like a medical person come in, and they're just spouting a whole bunch of nonsense about autism, like having someone in the audience who is autistic, who is able to like speak for themselves and talk about it, or even multiple people, perhaps you can somewhat like temper some of the misinformation that person gives. Like, not necessarily that that's going to happen, but I think it definitely could do. I mean, I've been to conventions and stuff talking about autism, and it's just, it's like, come on, like, get some of the autistic experience up in here. You know what I mean?
You'd speak to today would call what you're saying racist.
Yeah, I am racist.
Okay, so I think that's the section of the video that I wanted to talk about. I just found it quite interesting, like some of the ways that people attribute differences to personality, and whether you've got like the chutzpah to be able to push through things. dedicate yourself, hard work, desensitize yourself, be a strong person. It's often not about that, you know. And people like this, they haven't experienced life, you know, in the same way. They don't truly sort of have an insight, have an understanding of this kind of thing. And it is really like, I think the main thing is that kind of turning this into like a personal, emotional thing, which it isn't. And I mean, kudos to the event for being more inclusive to people with invisible disabilities, like they were saying. You know, it covers quite a lot of people. Neurodivergent individuals, I would imagine people with sensory differences. So it's great. And I wish there were more events like this, because I think a lot of autistic people do want to go to events. It's just the clapping, the noise, the speakers, the music, the atmosphere. Sometimes it's just a bit too much, and it's nice to have a quiet room to go to if you're struggling. You don't want to have a meltdown in public. You don't want to have unnecessary like sensory overload. I don't see any problem with that, but Pancho does. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. This guy's entire energy is vile. Yeah, well, is kind of, I think the whole wave, I don't know, I've seen a few guys like this. They kind of mix in sort of edgy humor with like political stances. And I think it's okay to sort of debate things, but like at least make sense. At least have an idea of what you're talking about before you say like, oh, there's poor sensitive people who are scared of claps. I'm not bloody scared of claps. What are you talking about? He was scared of like two hands coming together. You probably would be scared of claps if every time that it happened you experienced a lot of sensory overload and potential meltdowns. Yeah, I mean, I guess so, but it's more of a result rather than like a personal feeling, like a fear, I would say. This dude does not understand how the body responds to stress. He likely doesn't understand. Well, yeah, I imagine that this person thinks that everybody exists like in the same brain. Like everybody experiences stuff like his, and if he can take an ice bath and reduce all of his sensory stress, then that's gonna be the solution to everybody. Go off into the woods and fire a shotgun near your ear. That'll really sort you out, you know.